Collin Kartchner, social media activist and youth advocate, thank you so much for being part of Three Questions.
Thank you for having me.
Is social media killing our children?
That's a hard question because a year ago I would have said no. But now I'm doing what I'm doing, talking to kids and teenagers, thousands, if not 10,000 a week. I have stories that it is. I've talked to kids where they've literally told me my best friend took his life last week because of social media, or because of something that started on social media, or because of social media left unchecked in the house, the stuff that he was saying or doing. And so, I mean, a short answer, it can, and it has, and it will continue to do that if we don't start talking about it, if we don't start regulating, if we don't start getting on there with our kids and seeing what they're really seeing and doing. Absolutely. It is, and that's a scary thing.
When adults hear that social media is killing their children, I mean, I know when I heard that, I thought, what? Holy cow. What is going on psychologically and physiologically inside those young brains that lead them to say that I'm better off dead than disconnected?
Well, it's different every case, but what I'm seeing talking to so many kids is that when kids at 11, 12, 10, even 9, 8, 9, 10 are getting on smartphones and getting on social media, if parents aren't monitoring them, if they're just free reign on Instagram and on Snapchat, a lot of things happen. But what I see happen a lot is that kids start getting into this, sucked into this void of looking at constant perfection and photos of people who are having the perfect life. And as adults, it's hard for us to process that that's not real, that they're not in Maui every day of the week, and that, you know, that they had to work really hard to get this body. And so for a lot of kids at 12, 13, these teenage girls are sucked into this, and the questioning starts coming in. What's wrong with me? Why am I not like this? Why am I not perfect? Why am I not skinny? Why am I not beautiful? Why is my life not like this? And for a young, developing teenage mind, it's very hard to process that. And I talk to countless teenage kids, especially girls, who tell me I was a happy kid at 11, and then I got a smartphone, and I got an Instagram, and I immediately was miserable. I immediately saw the anxiety and the depression kick in. And a lot of that isn't just from photos on social media, but just you have unlocked 24/7 access to peer culture now, where the drama of being a 13-year-old that should end at 3:30 when the bell rings doesn't end now. The having to perform so they're not unfriended by friends is now a digital thing. And I've had so many parents tell me the second I gave my child a smartphone, I lost my kid. They got right onto social media. The things they love doing, they stopped doing. It's like they grew up overnight. And so there's a lot of psychological things. I mean, imagine being a teenager again, where what's most important? You're trying to figure out who you are. You are trying not to do anything stupid that the whole school finds out. You are putting on new avatars every day and seeing who am I and what group do I fit in with. Throwing social media onto that, throwing smartphones and throwing that constant peer culture is messing up a lot of our kids emotionally and psychologically. They can't figure out who they are when all they're doing is looking at everyone else's highlight reels. And it causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And then the suicidal thoughts kick in.
For the longest time, adults have considered pornography to be the biggest danger on social media. But now, well, from what you're saying, it sounds like psychological issues are every bit as damaging as the pornography is.
The pornography, parents need to realize, on Instagram and Snapchat, it's a click away. And that's what's really hard as parents, is you think, oh, I have Instagram and I use it just to look at photos of my sisters who are out of town, or look at photos of home renovations. There are hashtags you can search. You can watch straight pornography as a kid on Instagram and on Snapchat. It's just one click away. And so parents need to be aware of that. And a lot of kids, especially in Utah, when they look at pornography or they see it on their phone, they feel the shame because it's against their religious beliefs or what mom and dad taught them. And if they don't feel like they can talk to mom and dad, then they feel that that has a big effect on them psychologically. But I would say the biggest issue is the emotional and the psychological effect on their mental health, with the comparison, with the drama, the bullying, the cyberbullying that, you know, used to be face to face and end when the bell rang, is now over a screen, and it goes till 2 or 3 in the morning. And so a lot of these kids, when they have that phone, if they have it in their bedroom, they're on their phone till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, looking at stuff, keeping the drama going, and then we're seeing a lot of kids not going to school the next day because of a stomach ache or because they don't feel good. And parents are like, well, she's just not feeling good, but it's because she was up till 3 o'clock in the morning,
right,
fighting people and trying to maintain that digital avatar. A lot of our kids, sadly, who they are on their phone, who they are on social media means so much more to them than who they are in real life. And so that's why I think we're seeing suicide attempts skyrocket when kids, because of social media, because of smartphones, because of that, when this is jeopardized, and the whole school finds out, and nothing goes away. A mistake, a gaffe that you and I made in junior high was forgotten in an hour. For them, it never goes away anymore.
Yeah, it's forever on the internet.
It's always there. I mean, it's a really stressful time to be a kid if you have this too.
How did you come to this? I mean, this, as you were telling me before we started this interview, things really started to take off back in, what, April or June of last year? So how did you come to this message?
Yeah. So I was using, ironically enough, social media. I created this parody account to poke fun of how social media has created this toxic culture of constant perfectionism, where we're always sharing just the highlights of our life and how that affects a lot of our mental health when everything you see on social media is highlight reels. And it wasn't until January 19th of last year when I ran into a family friend who had a daughter who told us, she told me at a gas station, I hadn't seen him in 12 years, and this was a little daughter who was 8 when we knew her. We just loved this child, and she was like our little buddy. And then the mom tells me, she said, she's gone. She ended her life last year. And I said, what was it? What happened? And she literally looked at me and she said, I handed her a loaded gun when she was in middle school, and I didn't check on her, and I gave her free rein, and it killed her. And I was like, why would you give her a gun? And she pulled out her phone. She pulled out a smartphone. She said, I gave her a loaded gun, and I didn't teach her how to use it. And I didn't show her how to use it. And I watched that take my child spiral down. And I shared that story to the people following me. And for about 2 weeks straight, I got 2,000 messages a day from teenagers and from parents across the country. I mean, I had celebrities, athletes, talk show hosts, parents, ER docs, everyone sharing me story after story of how that same thing was happening to their kid. I mean, and the ones that hurt me the most were when a teenage boy would say, that was happening to my sister. Social media robbed her life. It made her feel miserable, and she took her life last year or 2 years ago. And parents were saying it was all because of social media and that smartphone. And so I was just sharing these stories, and I realized it opened up a huge Pandora's box, and people said, wait, maybe these phones that our kids we thought was, making their life more connected to friends, maybe it's actually really hurting them. And that was last January. I started talking more about it. And then in April, a little church group said, could you come talk to our girls about it? They're all struggling with this. I went and spoke to this little group. And 2 girls afterwards said, you literally just saved my life. Like, I was ready to kill myself because of social media. And you opened my eyes. And then since then, I've been speaking almost every day, at least a couple times a day, all over the country. A lot in Utah, all over the country. I think in like 30 days, in February, I think I spoke like 82 times in like 6 states. And
now you're booked out till what, April
2020, something like that.
Holy cow.
Which means it's a big deal. Parents, it's the same cycle. I gave my child a phone in middle school because I wanted her to be connected to friends. And then they get on social media, and then they get on all that, and they all tell me, I just watched my child spiral. Parents, they feel like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? I can't keep up.
Yeah.
There's new apps, there's new tech. I can't keep up. I try to monitor, and they jump over it. I try to put on filters, they jump over it. So I'm trying to help the kids realize they don't need the toxicity in their life that social media gives them. They can cut it out. And parents, how do you reconnect with your kids? Because if you were asking me, Collin, what's the biggest problem? It's not the kids and social media. It's that we as parents, so many of us have disconnected ourselves because of the same tech.
Yeah. Because social media is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. In fact, I mean, we as adults use it in our businesses. I mean, we're on email, we're checking websites, we're on checking other companies' Instagram and Facebook pages. It just goes on and on and on. How do we as adults set the tone and set the example for our young people who don't have the same parameters, who don't have the same needs to use the media? How do we set the proper example for them and tell them, do as I say and not as I do?
Probably the biggest amount of messages I get from kids, besides number 1 is social media is destroying my life. Number 2 is, how do I get my own mom off her phone? My mom's always yelling at me to get off my phone. She's like, "Why are you always doing this? Why are you always on your phone?" And I look at her, and she's on it all the time too.
On Pinterest.
She's on Pinterest. She's on her phone all day long too.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things parents can do, and I was like that for a long time. It wasn't until, and I tell this, I did a TED Talk in Salt Lake in September, and I tell the story of how I was doing that. I was doing that the same thing, and I was on my phone all the time trying to help people, trying to raise money, do fundraisers, and it wasn't until my little 10-year-old said, "Dad, why do you love your phone more than you love me?" It wasn't until then. Well, I went out and bought one of these guys. I don't know if anyone's seen one of these, but
it's a flip phone.
A flip phone, yeah. So I went to the store.
A dumb phone.
A dumb phone. I realized that I can't teach my kids to do anything if I'm not doing it myself. And so I went and bought a flip phone to my wife. We went to the T-Mobile store. They had 2 left, and he literally blew the dust off.
There you go.
Like, "Are you sure? You want
got
this?"
$5?
It was like $75. He's like, "It's $10 a month." I'm like,
dear.
And so in my home, we set a rule, my wife and I. The rule was that we're going to do our best to never let our kids see us on our phones, ever. And so if I get a text, the smartphone goes in a drawer when I come home from work. And so when we go out to bowling, when we go out to plays, my kid had a little dance recital last night. I leave the smartphone in the drawer and I bring the flip phone. If I need to make a phone call or someone needs to get a hold of me, they still can. Mm-hmm. But I don't have any distractions now doing this. Yeah. And I've set a goal in my own life with my own kids. I don't want them to ever see me on it. So even if I get a phone call or text and I have to take it, if we're at dinner, I'll kind of hide it over here. Mm-hmm. Or if anything, I tell parents, verbalize why you're on your phone to your kids. If they see you on your phone, all they feel, and they tell me all day, that thing means more to my dad than I do.
Yeah.
And they don't know that.
Realizing
they don't realize
that,
it. I'm answering an email.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make money to take you to Disneyland next week.
Exactly.
So I tell parents a lot, if you have to be on your phone in front of your kids, tell them what you're doing. Hey, guess what? We're gonna have dinner, but Daddy needs to respond to these clients real quick because you see this house, that's what pays for it.
Yeah, that's right.
So give me 15 minutes. I'm gonna do this real fast. And just by even verbalizing it to your kids why you're on your phone, that you're not just crushing candy, that you're not just wasting time, is a big step. And you'll see a change in your kids' behavior. My 10-year-old was very defiant. She was very good at school, but she was very defiant at home. She was fighting all the time. And after I made that change, where there was more of that we were connecting again, all the defiance left. And I've had tons of parents tell me, I didn't even realize that me being on my phone or my iPad in front of my kids all the time was affecting them so much. And kids, they tell me all day long that they feel worthless around their family. They feel like they don't exist around their parents. Yeah. And they asked me, "Collin, how do I get my dad to get off his phone?" I got a message driving up here. My wife was driving, thankfully, and I checked it, and it was a girl, and she said, "I told my dad I want to go on a date with you," and she was like this 14-year-old girl, and she showed me a photo of just his hands on his phone. Oh. And she said, I said, "I want to spend time with you," and he's on his phone the whole time. So we have to model better digital behaviors for our kids. We're not going to save them until we save ourselves.
How much do the high-tech companies play into this issue of oversaturation of social media in our young people's lives?
One thing parents need to realize is that there's no incentive at all, really, for tech companies, for game makers, for app makers, for Fortnite, for Instagram to slow down. These are free apps. They only make money if people are in the app. And they have hired teams of experts, neurologists, addiction PhDs that work behind your kid's screen to keep them on that screen. There are little things they do, and if I told you all of them, you would blow your mind.
Tell us a few of them.
Well, for example, and this was a guy, Ramsey Brown, who's got a cool company in California. He shared on brain hacking on CNN that, for example, on Instagram, one thing they do is if you post a photo and let's say it gets 50 likes, they hold some back in a queue. And so let's say your daughter posts a photo that, she's like, "Oh, I look good. I usually get 50 likes on this." If Instagram only shows them 10 and they hold 40 back and they wait, why are they doing that? They're waiting because if a 13-year-old girl posts a photo that gets 6 likes or 10 likes, but it really got 50, they just didn't show them to her, she's going to start doing what? She's going to start pulling her phone out and being like, "Why do people not like my photo? Like, what's going on?" She's going to keep pulling out. "What's wrong with me?" She's going to text her friends like, "Hey, like my photo because I only got 6 likes." And they're getting her to keep pulling that out. And then they dump all those likes all at once. And this wave of endorphins comes over her. And she says, oh my gosh, this thing that I was ready to die, now I feel really good about. It's like when it's like why I keep golfing. I hit one good shot at the end. I'm like, I'm going to go pro, right? So they're manipulating on the back end with gaming companies and especially social media. They're using that dopamine feedback loop of rewards and punishments to hook, especially our kids and us, to this almost like little Pavlovian dogs, to this feedback system of, okay, well, I post a photo and it doesn't get a lot of likes, and then suddenly it gets a bunch. The dopamine rush hits you, and you go back to the behavior. I mean, that
seems so diabolical.
It really
on the part of
does.
the tech companies.
It does, and it feels sadistic. And I just want parents need to realize, your little 12-year-old who you gave a phone to, who suddenly you've lost your child because she's on it all day. It was done deliberately. It was created deliberately because there's billions of dollars being made on the back of our kids. Every time a new game or a new app comes out, the companies profit, but our kids suffer because of it.
Bullying has always been around. It just changes venues, you know. What is the difference between a cyberbully and a bully on the playground?
Well, sadly, because of tech, because of phones, and kids in first and second, third grade getting them now, the phone is robbing our kids of learning empathy. And so if you look at the bullying, like you said, it's been around forever. The level and the extent of it is skyrocketing now, because what's happening is, in the old days, if I said something mean to a girl on the playground and she cried, I saw her cry, I realized that I made her do that, or my actions caused that, and I feel bad. And so I learned, my brain says, you don't want to feel bad, so don't do that again. What's happening, though, is now kids are doing it behind screens. And so the level of cryptic messages that are being sent, and instead of just being like, oh, you know, the old yo mama jokes, I mean, they're going straight to, you're worthless, dig a hole and die. Like, no one likes you, go kill. I get messages all day long from kids saying, kids are telling me to kill myself. They're telling me you're worthless on social media. And the problem is, when they say that on a screen, they don't see that girl in her bedroom crying her eyes out, looking for a bottle of pills.
Yeah.
So they don't learn any empathy. We're raising an entire generation of kids that are being robbed of empathy because of screens. So the cyberbullying, of course the cyberbullying is going crazy, because these kids, and the feedback and the love they're looking for is all synthetic now. It's all digital. And so, number two, we're creating a lot of, they're not meaner kids, but we give them technology and access to a platform where they can be a little more gutsy with the stuff they share, because there's no feedback saying, oh, you should feel bad for doing that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons I got a daughter in middle school, so I'm not going to give her a phone, because I need her to experience what it's like if you say something mean to Chloe, you know, hey, nice shirt, I don't really like that, and see it hurt her feelings, so she can learn some empathy here.
Right.
I mean, I've had second graders send me messages they've got from other kids. These are 8, 9-year-olds that are, you know, go die and kill yourself. You're just a spoiled brat with money. I mean, literally 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. And parents, they say, how would they learn this? I mean, how are they so mean? Have you ever been to a YouTube video and looked at the comments?
Yeah.
I mean, the kids learn very young if they have social media. If we're introducing them to this early, they're seeing what other people are saying, and monkey see, monkey do. Of course they're going to say mean stuff. These kids have, until they're about 15, a half-developed part of their brain that teaches logic and decision-making. They're trying to be adults with brains that are only halfway there.
That don't quite work all the way that way.
Not even close, yeah.
So what do you do? I mean, how do we address this problem? I know we as adults have to set a good example, but how do you avoid World War III in your house by adjusting or changing the social media habits of everybody in the home?
Parents have to start having crucial conversations with their kids. They have to start talking to them before they're asking for the phone, and while they're asking for the phone, and when you give them access, you've got to. The days of just giving them a device and saying, good luck, you'll be fine, are long gone. There has to be constant supervision, constant monitoring, and constant conversations. And that's why we're seeing a lot of kids struggle, is because that disconnection is happening. A lot of us parents, you know, we were working so hard today to put food on the table and to put them in soccer and dance and all this stuff, that a lot of us, we come home from work and we need to go numb out. So we just get on our iPad or our phone and we do this. Mm-hmm. And so our kids follow our example, and they go do that too. So we have got to bring that connection back. parents have to start talking to their kids again, and they got to start communicating, asking the hard questions. And
Like what? What kinds of hard questions? What kinds of conversations are you talking about?
they need to start asking about things like sexting in middle school, because it's starting. Girls and boys are starting to do this in 7th grade, right here in our community. They need to start talking about sharing body parts and what's appropriate to share and not share. Our kids don't have phones or social media, but even my 10-year-old, we'll pull up Instagram and we'll go through some feeds and say, hey, what do you think about this photo of this kid who shared this photo of them in a bikini and they're only 12? Like, what do you think about this? And look at all these strangers that are following her commenting. Like, what do you think about this? Having those conversations while they're young, asking the tough questions. No more asking your kid, have you ever seen this? Because if they have a smartphone, they have.
They've seen it.
They've seen all of it.
Yeah.
I tell parents, I say, you give them, if you give your boy or girl a smartphone or Instagram or Snapchat, you're giving them a Playboy magazine and saying, don't look at this. They're going to see it. So the questions are now, when was the last time that you saw this? Or when was the last time someone said this to you? The number one reason, or the number one thing kids tell me, and I get thousands of messages every week from teenagers, and they say, I'm struggling with bullying. I have a ton of anxiety because of social media. I'm self-harming, which is going, the amount of kids self-harming because of social media would blow your mind. When I ask them back and I say, I'm so sorry you're struggling with this, why haven't you talked to mom? The number one response is, she'll take my phone. If I tell my dad that I'm doing this, he'll take my phone. If I told my mom people are telling me to kill myself on Instagram, she'll take my phone. And that is the thing the kids care about, is they can't have that communication cut off. And why are they saying that? We, as parents, made the mistake of making that phone the only pawn in our game of, do what I want you to do. Well, if you don't, I'll take the one thing you care about. Yeah. So I think the other important thing is we have to shift the narrative that phone is a tool. It's not their whole world. It's not their whole life. This is a tool to work on homework, to serve others, to check in on your friends for a little bit, and that's it. No more of this 7, 8, 9. I mean, the average teen in America is on a handheld screen like 9 hours a day now. Yeah. No more.
They also use them to call home as well.
Oh, yeah.
And make phone calls.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, there's kids like, I don't know why they call this a phone. I've never literally made a phone call with anybody. I've just called a little mini computer, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, parents. Social media in this modern day has turned us into very insecure, nervous parents. And a lot of us, when we give our little daughter a smartphone at 12, I have kids tell me, like, my mom texts me every 5 minutes, how are you? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? And she's like, my mom's stressing me out.
Now, obviously, the mother doesn't have Find My Friends.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
It's an app on social media.
So. Good plug.
Yeah. So you painted a rather dire picture of where we are, and for all intents and purposes, it is pretty accurate. What happens if we do not change course? What will happen to our children? What will happen to our families? What will happen to society in general?
I'm not a sky is falling chicken little guy, but I have talked to enough kids to say this very bluntly, that our kids are in a public health crisis. The rise of teen anxiety and depression and suicidality and suicide, and in Utah, we struggle with this a lot. I mean, for kids aged 10 to 17, suicide is now the leading cause of death for kids in our state. We are only scraping the surface of the iceberg of anxiety and depression and suicide, that if we don't fix this, if we don't reel this, put this line back in the cage, it's only going to get worse. The rate of depression, the rate of accidental death due to overdose, these kids who are being raised, we have an entire generation now of kids who have gone their whole life with a screen. And what that's done to a lot of them is it's robbed them of the ability to emotionally regulate. Because when they, if they feel discomfort or awkwardness, or if they feel nervous, or any of those feelings that they need to experience, now they just pull out the screen and it blocks that, right? And so when these kids become, 20, 22, 23, and they get into the workforce, I think we're going to see it affect the workforce. I mean, I have friends that hire for companies. They're like, man, it's really hard to interview a 19, 20-year-old now because they don't know how to talk. I mean, they don't know how to communicate. Yeah. And so I think that we have got to, The rates are alarming. We've got to sound the alarm even more, and we got to have some tough conversations. When is the actual appropriate age to give our kids this? I'm working with a group called fixappratings.org, and they're going to the Hill to say, look, Snapchat and Instagram tells parents you can be 12. But look at this, 1 click, 2 click porn, 1 click, 2 click cutting videos, 2 clicks, and we're watching the worst things ever. I mean, parents need to realize, like, sending your kid on Instagram and Snapchat when they say it's for 12 is like letting them go to a PG or a PG-13 movie, and suddenly they're watching pornography. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's out there. I think we got to fix this, or we're going to see numbers get worse and worse. The thing is, the kids, they don't want to be addicted. They don't want to be hooked. They don't want to be little screen junkies. They want to be free. They want to be kids. They want to be happy. I get messages all the time from parents. I share a message from kids saying, I went to your assembly, I heard you speak, and I threw away Instagram. I got rid of it. And the parents say, how do you get these kids to get off social, like throw it away? I tell them, I don't tell them to throw it away. I say, use it for good. Use it to inspire yourself. Cut the feeds that steal your joy. But the kids, they hear me talk and they say, I don't want any of this. I just want to go be a kid. Yeah. I don't want to sit there and compare my life all day long and get bullied all day long. I don't need this anymore.
Well, and in the interest of full disclosure here, you spoke at the middle school where we have a student, and not only he went, but his sisters, younger and older sisters, all went as well. And it was really fascinating because he came home and he said, Mom, I've gotten rid of all the games off my phone.
Wow.
And the girls came back and said, Mom, you know what? I think you ought to just hold on to my phone for a couple of days, because I've got some friends that are, approaching me with really difficult stuff that I don't feel at 12 years old I can handle. Yeah. She didn't use those exact words, but that was, in essence, what she was saying. She asked Diane to hold on to the phone for her for a couple of days. And so what you're doing truly is starting to move the needle. And so it is remarkable, but it is a huge task.
It's a big needle to move. It is.
It's a huge task.
And we have, everything I've done for the last year, Speaking Everywhere, has all been, parents come to me, they message me, and they say, how do I get you to come to my community? How do I get you to come to my school? This thing has been 100% grassroots efforts. And it's been incredible, and it changes the community. I go to a community, I speak at the schools, and then I speak at for the parents that night. And when I leave, the whole community changed, because the kids heard it, the parents heard it, and now at dinner the next night they're having these conversations.
Right.
Which are crucial. We can't just talk to the kids about this. No. If they do this and they go back to home and mom and dad are doing this all day and ignoring them, they're going to fall back to these habits.
Right. Right. Well, we will put a link to your website on our website so that people who want to get a hold of you and learn more about this can do so. But I'll tell you what, Collin Kartchner, social media activist and youth advocate, thank you so much for being part of 3 Questions.
Thanks for having me, Bob.